Welcome to Train Sim World, an immersive and highly detailed rail simulation featuring authentic routes and trains from around the world. This is the training center. Here you can learn about how to navigate and interact with the world, as well as how to operate the many trains. Let's start by looking around. Find each of the markers and look at them. Your current objective is shown at the top left of the screen. Walk to the blue marker to complete the current objective. You've been awarded some action points. These are displayed in the top right corner of the screen and count towards your overall experience level for the game. This is one of the many types of route tasks to be discovered. Keep an eye out for many more types and styles of route tasks, which can involve placing, collecting, or fixing a variety of things. Head into the main building, and you'll continue your induction there. You can pause Train Sim World at any point to review objectives and a lot of other information about what's happening at the moment. Try it now, and then return to the game after you've had a look around. Now that we've covered some of the basics of moving around and interacting with the environment, let's take a walk through the building and find the trains. This is Central Square. From here, you can explore the main training center depot and surrounding yards. Your journey operating trains is just getting started here in the training center. Remember, you can always come back here from the main menu to refresh your knowledge if you're unsure about anything. Continue to learn and other training modules here in the training center, and then you'll be ready to take on more challenges in other environments. This module will cover the on-screen overlay, known as the heads-up display or HUD, that is shown when you are in control of a train. Climb up the ladder into the train and then sit in the indicated seat. Welcome to the most important seat in the train. While sitting here, you'll be in full control. Before you think about moving the train, though, let's look at the HUD overlay that's appeared on the bottom right. The heads-up display is a guide to what your train is doing. The main part of the HUD is the speed display. A white bar will appear around the outside to show your current speed, and the red mark indicates your maximum permitted speed. This is the direction display. An arrow will indicate forward, reverse, and neutral directions. This is the power display. A number will indicate what position the power or throttle control is in. These are the brake indicators. The exact ones shown will vary by train and will often be visible in the train itself on various gauges. They tell you what's happening in the braking system. The most important one is the BC or brake cylinder. If that's reading 0, then your brakes are released. Anything else, and brakes are applied and you won't be able to move. Every train can have small variations in the HUD unique to the way it works, but they will mostly look the same. As you learn to control new trains, study the HUD and learn how it helps you operate it. If you want to see this again, you can rerun this training module at any time. In this training module, you're going to look at making the train move, and then bringing it to a stop again. While many trains have different controls and are operated in different ways, there are basically always 3 controls that are common and are required to move the train. The reverser sets the direction between forwards and backwards. The brakes are used to slow or stop the train. The throttle controls how fast the train accelerates. In this train, the throttle and brakes are controlled by a combined power and brake handle. We want to move the train forwards, so move the reverser to that position. Pull the power brake handle toward you to release the brakes and apply power. Now that you've reached your target speed, you can move the throttle control back to 0. The train will then coast on level ground, and the train will only slow down very gradually. While the specifics of operating brakes vary from train to train, the basic process of stopping is fundamentally the same. Bring this train to a complete stop by moving the power brake handle into the braking range. The amount of braking you'll need to apply also varies depending on whether you're going uphill or downhill, and how heavy your train is. Stopping a train is one of the biggest challenges of controlling them, particularly stopping them in the right place. That concludes this module. Restart the module to learn the steps again, or move on to the next module. In this training module, you'll be learning basic passenger operations in a BR Class 323 electrical multiple unit. When you are ready, climb aboard the train. Take a seat in the driver's position. To unlock the control desk, insert the master key. Great work! To allow passengers to board, you will need to open the doors. Keep the doors open to allow enough time for passengers to board the train. Now that the passengers have boarded the train, close the doors. Apply power to get moving. This train has a combined brake and throttle handle. Apply a small amount of brake to gently bring the train to a stop at the next station. Good work. This time, open the doors on the opposite side. Close the doors. Reach the next destination unguided. Great job. That concludes training on passenger operations. In this training module, you will be learning how to change driving ends of a train. During this brief introduction, you will be taken through how to set up a cab for driving, shut down a cab, and how to change which train cab is the lead. Firstly, we need to set up this cab for driving. When ready, apply a small amount. Set the brake throttle handle to neutral. Well done. You have successfully shut down this cab. Now travel to the cab at the other end of the train. Sit in the driver's seat. Now activate the new cab for driving, following the same steps as before. Well done. You now know how to change ends in a train. That concludes this training module. This module will go over the fundamentals of operating junctions to change the path your train will take, and how to navigate using the map. Most rail lines around the world are controlled remotely by a signaling center or dispatcher. From the perspective of the train, the direction taken is automatic. But within yards and depots, many small and frequent movements are required. This makes remote control of the track impractical. In these locations, the direction taken is manually controlled. You can set junctions by either walking up to them and interacting with them, or going to the 2D map and changing them from there. Let's change this junction by hand first. Walk over to it and change it by operating the lever. Notice how the point blades move on the track. Try moving it a few times so that you can see how it works. Let's head over to the train, and then we can look at the map. Open the map and change the indicated junctions. Your junctions are set correctly. Let's get the train moving and see it all working. If you can't remember how to make the train start and stop, there is a training module you can rerun to remind yourself. Now that you've reached your target speed, you can move the throttle control back to 0. The train will then coast on level ground, and the train will only slow down very gradually. Bring this train to a complete stop by moving the power brake handle into the braking range. That concludes this module. All the junctions in the training center are manual, so you can go anywhere you wish using the map and by changing junctions manually. If you want to practice, go to Explore on Foot in the training center. You'll find trains dotted around, and you can practice driving them and moving them around the yard. Don't forget, you can always rerun this training module later if you can't remember any of what's been covered. In this training module, you're going to learn to drive a diesel-electric locomotive and how the controls differ from a multiple unit. This is a BR Class 66 diesel-electric locomotive, typically used for freight operations in the United Kingdom. The reverser sets the direction between forwards and backwards. There are 3 types of brakes in this locomotive, and which one you use will depend on the situation. We'll learn more about the different brake types in future training modules. The throttle controls how fast the train accelerates. We want to move the train forwards, so move the reverser in that direction. Keep the brake control and release until you can see the brake pipe control. Watch the brake cylinder, or BC gauge, to see it gradually reduce to 0, which tells you that the brakes are now fully released and you can move the train. Apply some throttle to get the train moving. As you apply power, notice the amp bar rising. This is the amount of power being fed into the traction motors. Now that you've reached your target speed, you can move the throttle control back to 0. The train will then coast on level ground, and the train will only slow down very gradually. Brakes in this locomotive are lapped. Rather than directly selecting the brake force with a handle, you use the brake control to add or release braking force. Braking force will be held until you release it, as you did before setting off. Bring this train to a complete stop by holding the brake control in the apply state until you see the brake pipe control needle in the center of your cab desk showing about 4 bar. The amount of braking you'll need to apply also varies depending on whether you're going uphill or downhill, and how heavy your train is. Stopping a train is one of the biggest challenges of controlling them, particularly stopping them in the right place. That concludes this module. Restart the module to learn the steps again, or move on to the next module. In this training module, you're going to learn how coupling operations are typically performed. Coupling and uncoupling is important both for freight and passenger operations. Different regions and trains have different methods of coupling, but the fundamentals always remain the same. You'll be operating a BR Class 66 locomotive and coupling and uncoupling to mineral wagons, which are typically used for transporting coal, ores, and other mining products. This locomotive can couple with either Buckeye or Hook type couplers. Before you couple, you should inspect them and ensure that they're in the correct position. Attempting to couple when couplers are in the incorrect position can cause damage or derailment. Now let's head into the locomotive and couple to the wagons. You'll be backing up to the wagons, so set the reverser to the reverse position. Watch the brake cylinder, or BC gauge, to see it gradually reduce to 0, which tells you that the brakes are now fully released. Apply some throttle. The external camera provides improved visibility when reversing. Slowly, come to a stop just in front of the wagons. You need to be close enough to allow coupling. Ideally, the buffers should be touching. Couple the wagons to the locomotive. You can either do this on foot or use the external camera. Good work. Now, change direction with the reverser and bring these wagons to the indicated location. Now uncouple the wagons, either on foot or using the external camera. Change direction with the reverser and come to a stop in the indicated siding. That concludes this module. Remember, this process might differ slightly depending on the region and rolling stock. If you're ever unsure, check the training modules. In this training module, you'll be learning the basics of operating a steam locomotive. You'll be driving the LNER Class A3 steam locomotive. When you're ready, climb onto the footplate. Sit in the driver's position. Let's prepare the locomotive for departure. Set the reverser to full forward position. This locomotive has a combination brake that controls both steam and vacuum brakes. Steam brakes will apply on just the locomotive. Vacuum brakes will apply to the rest of the train, so long as it's equipped with vacuum brakes. The brakes are released when a vacuum is created. The driver can use the brake handle to destroy the vacuum, which will start to apply the brakes. To create a vacuum, you should use the ejectors. The small ejector should be left open when the train is running. The large ejector can be used to more quickly increase the vacuum after coupling or heavy braking. Open the cylinder cocks to remove any water from the cylinders after the locomotive has been left standing. Water in the cylinders can damage the The regulator acts like the throttle for steam locomotives. It controls how much steam is delivered into the cylinder. We're starting to pick up speed. Move the reverser toward mid-gear. Come to a stop in the indicated location. Use the combination brake to apply some braking force and bring the train to a stop. Good work. That concludes all the basics of operating a steam locomotive, but there's still more to learn. If you want to dive into the specifics of how to operate a particular train, look for its training module in the training center. In this training module, you'll be learning advanced operations of a steam train, as well as basic passenger operations in a Scania 8F steam locomotive. When you are ready, set up the locomotive for driving. This locomotive has a combination brake that controls both steam and vacuum brakes. Steam brakes will apply on just the locomotive. Vacuum brakes will apply to the rest of the train, so long as it's equipped with vacuum brakes. To create a vacuum, you should use the ejectors. The small ejector should be left open when the train is running. The large ejector can be used to more quickly increase the vacuum after coupling or heavy braking. Open the cylinder cocks to remove any water from the cylinders after the locomotive has been left standing. Water in the cylinders can damage the locomotive as it does not compress like steam. The regulator acts like the throttle for steam locomotives. It controls how much steam is delivered into the cylinders. Slowly open the regulator to apply some power. Power delivery is delayed in a steam locomotive, and applying too much power too early can cause wheel slip. We're starting to pick up speed. Move the reverser toward mid-gear. This reduces the amount of steam let into the cylinders and saves energy. Prepare to stop at the next station, ready to perform passenger operations. Close the regulator and gently apply the combination brake to bring the train to a stop at our destination. Great work. To allow passengers to board, you will need to open the doors. Keep the doors open to allow enough time for passengers to board the train. Now that the passengers have boarded the train, close the doors. Now let's go to the next stop. Close the doors. Great job. That concludes training on passenger operations in a steam train. In this training module, you will learn how to refill this Scania 8F locomotive with water and coal before coupling up to a set of freight wagons. In this steam locomotive, the water and coal needed for operation are stored behind the cab, in what's known as a tender. Firstly, you'll need to prepare the locomotive to receive water. Walk over to the water crane, where you will need to move the water hose over the rear of the locomotive's tender. Now the hose is in position, climb up the tender and open the water hatch. Insert the hose into the tender tank once the water hatch is open. Great! The hose is in, and the tender tank is ready to be filled. Turn on the water and start filling the tender tank. Okay, now you need to fill the tender with coal. Move the train so that the tender is underneath the coal tower. Great work! The locomotive is now fully coaled, watered, and ready for service. Now, let's couple to the wagons. This locomotive and wagons use a hook-type coupler. Once you're close enough, you'll need to manually connect them to the locomotive. Slowly, come to a stop at the buffers of the wagons. You can couple either on foot or using the external camera. Good work. That concludes this training module.
Welcome to Bregenz Bahnhof, located in Vorarlberg, the westernmost state of Austria. The original station began construction in 1870, although this was demolished 30 years ago in 1989, before the station was rebuilt 500 meters west of the original location. Looks like the workers haven't finished placing the route maps. Let's place a missing one while you wait. There are more route tasks to discover. Make sure to apply more route maps, fix snow height poles, and collect chocolate bars and Tyrolean hats. Your colleague, David Meyerhofer, would like to speak to you. Take a seat. The train is just about to leave. The Vorarlberg Railway was first proposed by railway entrepreneur Karl Ganal in 1847, when he recognized the necessity for a railway in the area. He would go on to pay for much of the preliminary work out of his own pocket. Construction began in 1870. and met many delays due to needing approval from all the neighboring states in the area. Finally, in 1872, public services began between Bludenz and Locos. Shortly after, in 1873, connections to the wider Austrian railway network were completed, and services between Zurich in Switzerland and Munich in Germany would use this line. In 1954, electrification work on the line was completed, although electric trains couldn't pass into the German rail network. This meant passengers and international services to Germany had to change to a diesel service in Lindau. Take the train to Austria. Spanning cross-border, the busy Vorarlberg S-Bahn Line shuttles from quaint German island life to the foothills of the Austrian Alps. All new and bustling ÖBB traffic awaits in train-sim world. In this training module, you'll be learning how to drive this ÖBB 4024 electric multiple unit. For this introduction, you will be driving the train a short distance and performing passenger operations. The ÖBB 4024, also known as the Talent, is manufactured by Bombardier and entered service in 2004. The name Talent is an acronym in German for Talbot, leichter Nahverkehrstriebwagen, meaning Talbot, light suburban railcar. The ÖBB 4024 is a 4-car unit with a top speed of 140 km per hour. Now set the reverser to forward. Set the headlights to indicate that this train is operational. Insert the train brake handle. First, release the brakes. Open the passenger doors to allow boarding. The ÖBB 4024 is part of Bombardier's Talent series of multiple units, manufactured by Bombardier Talbot. More than 300 Talent series vehicles have been produced and have seen use in more than 7 different countries. Close the doors before departure. To release the brakes and apply power, push the handle away from you. Now you've built up some speed, you can return the master controller to the off position to begin coasting. Coasting is a method used to efficiently maintain speed, and reduce motor stress and maintenance requirements. Keeping to speed limits is important. If you begin overspeeding, apply a small amount of braking force by moving the master controller into the braking range. You're now approaching the station. Begin applying a small amount of braking force by moving the master controller into the braking range. Nice job! The train has safely come to a stop. Close the doors and drive to the next station unguided. Good work! That concludes all of the basics for operating this train. In this training module, you will be taken through the operation of a BR-185.2 electric locomotive. During this brief introduction, you will cover the critical driving controls and freight operations. When you're ready, climb aboard to get started. Take a seat in the driver's position. This is where you will be spending. For this introduction, you will be driving the locomotive a short distance and coupling to a short freight train. To activate the control desk, insert the reverser. Set the reverser. This controls the direction of travel. Set the headlights to let others around us know this locomotive is operational. locomotive is now ready to go. Use the throttle to apply some power to get moving. Keeping to speed limits is important. If you begin overspeeding, apply a small amount of braking force using the train brake. This train is part of the Bombardier Tracks family, a modular platform of diesel and electric locomotives that come in both passenger and freight variations. More than 1,800 locomotives of this family have been sold throughout Europe and are now in use in 17 different countries. The BR 185.2, part of the Trax 2 family, is known for the noticeable scale it plays when accelerating from 0 to 16 kilometers per hour. This locomotive can produce 5,600 kilowatts and has a maximum operational speed of 140 kilometers per hour. The freight wagons are behind you. Change direction with the reverser, then change the junction indicated, either by walking over to it or using the map. The junction is correctly aligned, and you can now couple up to the freight. Come to a stop once your locomotive gently touches the wagons. You can couple and uncouple from either an external camera or on foot. Let's connect the formation using the external camera. Nice work! Change direction with the reverser and move the train forward into the indicated siding. You can couple and uncouple from either an external camera or on foot. Uncouple from the wagons on foot this time. That's it for this introduction. Well done!
Welcome to LA Union Station, located in Los Angeles, California. Approved in 1926 and opened in 1939, LA Union Station was designed to consolidate rail services from Union Pacific, Santa Fe, and Southern Pacific into one station owned by the city. There's a missing route map over there. Fix that while you're here. are many more route tasks to discover. Make sure to apply the route maps, put up the anniversary banners, hang up the hats, and visit the hot dog stands. Clark Smith, your ship supervisor, would like to speak with you. The Antelope Valley line runs for over 70 miles from the bustling heart of LA to Lancaster, the western tip of the Mojave Desert. The railroad along the Santa Clara River originally opened in 1876 and was operated by Southern Pacific as a connection to the national rail network. In 1979, due to falling demand, this line ceased operation. In 1990, the Los Angeles County Transportation Commission purchased the right-of-way from Southern Pacific. Passenger services as far as Santa Clarita began operation in 1992. When the Northridge earthquake hit in 1994, plans to extend the line north to Antelope Valley were expedited by over 10 years to aid relief efforts. U.S. Navy Seabees and a legion of workers from the LA County Public Works Department constructed stations in just a few days, rather than the 3 to 6 months they usually take. Passenger services started on this extension less than a week after the earthquake. Today, this important commuter line carries over 5,700 people in and out of LA each day. Run to the hills and experience the hefty power of modern American diesel. Tackle the tough terrain of Californian canyons with the Antelope Valley Line, between the sprawling Los Angeles cityscape and the desert bushes of Lancaster, in almighty Metrolink traction. West Coast rails are yours to explore in Train Sim World, Antelope Valley Line. In this training module, you will be learning to operate this EMD F125 Spirit diesel locomotive. During this brief introduction, you will be taken through the critical driving controls and performing passenger operations. When you're ready to begin, climb aboard. Sit in the engineer's seat. You'll now go through the steps needed to take over this locomotive. You will need to set the generator field switch. This needs to be enabled for the locomotive to generate power. This locomotive requires the reverser handle to be inserted before operation. Switch the front headlights on. Regardless of the time of day or weather, all locomotives must have their headlights on. You'll need to set the brakes to the correct mode to allow them to be controlled by this cab. We can now begin loading. It is time to depart. Close the passenger doors. The master controller controls both the throttle and dynamic brakes. Dynamic brakes use the locomotive's electric traction motors to generate resistance to reduce the wear of the brake pads. Apply a small amount of throttle. The automatic brakes are controlled with their own handle, but will blend the dynamic brakes in the air brakes. The air brakes will apply braking force to every car in this formation. Now, release the brakes. Coasting is a method used to efficiently maintain speed and reduce motor stress and maintenance requirements. Keeping to speed limits is important. If you begin overspeeding, slow the train using the master controller's dynamic brake range. The EMD F125 is a passenger locomotive manufactured by Electromotive Diesel for the North American market. It's powered by a Caterpillar C127 20V20 diesel engine, rated at 4,700 horsepower, and is capable of speeds up to 125 miles per hour. When it launched in 2017, it was the first new passenger locomotive in North America in 15 years. To date, 40 have been produced, all of which were supplied to Metrolink. The F125 features a modern, streamlined body designed by Vossloh España. You are approaching the station. Begin applying a small amount of braking force using the automatic brake to bring the train to a gentle stop. Nice job. The train has safely come to a stop. You can now begin loading. Good work. That concludes all the basics of operating this train. In this training module, you will be learning to operate the Rotem commuter car, manufactured by Hyundai Rotem. During this brief introduction, you will be taken through the critical driving controls and performing passenger operations. When you're ready to begin, climb aboard. Sit in the engineer's seat. You'll now go through the steps needed to take over this train. You will need to set the generator field switch. This needs to be enabled for the locomotive to generate power. Switch the front headlights on. Regardless of the time of day or weather, all locomotives must have their headlights on. You'll need to set the automatic brake cutout to cut in to allow the braking to be controlled from this cab. Okay, it's time to depart. Close the passenger doors. The master control. The automatic brakes are controlled with their own handle, but will blend the dynamic brakes and air brakes. The air brakes will apply braking force to every car in this formation. Now, release the brakes. Coasting is a method used to efficiently maintain speed and reduce motor stress and maintenance requirements. Keeping to speed limits is important. If you begin overspeeding, slow the train using the master controller's dynamic brake range. The Rotem commuter cars were introduced in 2010. To date, Metrolink has received 117 of them. As part of Metrolink's commitment to passenger safety, these cars incorporate the latest CEM technology. This incorporates redesigned seats, tables, and special energy-absorbing zones at the end of each car. Metrolink was the first rail operator in the US to incorporate CEM in passenger trains. Cab cars like this one allow a locomotive to be operated remotely from the other end of the formation, preventing the need for runarounds or additional locomotives. You are approaching the station. Begin. Nice job! The train has safely come to a stop. You can now begin loading. Good work. That concludes all the basics of operating this train.
Welcome to your first day as a trainee driver here on the East Coast Mainline. First opened by the Great Northern Railway in 1850, Peterborough is a vital station on the East Coast Mainline network. This station acts as a major interchange and serves the north and south mainline traffic, as well as long distance and local east and west services. There's a missing route map over there. Fix that while you're here. There are more tasks to find, so be sure to apply the route maps. Refill water bottles, restock newspaper stands, and restock the first aid points. Head of Driver and Passenger Experience, Emily Turner, would like to speak to you. Follow the markers to board the train before departure. Take a seat anywhere you like.
Passengers are reminded that smoking is prohibited at all stations and on all train services. This includes e-cigarettes.
Throughout the years, Peterborough Station has had several different names. Originally just called Peterborough, it was later renamed Peterborough Priestgate, then to Peterborough Cowgate in 1902, before reverting back to simply Peterborough in 1911. During the 1970s, major alterations occurred to this station under British Rail. The track layout was remodelled to provide high-speed through lines and 2 new platforms. The original bay and through platforms were removed, and a brand new platform was built to the west of the fast lines. In 2014, Network Rail spent around £2.5 million on the station and its surroundings, with the intention of increasing passenger capacity on trains and ease the movement of freight through the station. This upgrade has also seen changes to the booking office and station concourse building, along with the introduction of ticket gates. A unique feature of this route is the flashing green signal aspect, used to trial 140 miles per hour running. Although today this speed is usually not permitted, the signal aspect remains. This train is a BR Class 801 electric multiple unit in LNER livery. They were first introduced in 2019 and were built to operate the high-speed express services across the network. As a trainee driver on this route, you will drive this train as well as the BR Class 66 freight locomotive. Accelerate and feel the high-speed thrill of British intercity travel in train sim world. Express services await on the iconic East Coast Mainline, so hurry through the English countryside between Peterborough and Doncaster in sleek and flashy traction. In this training module, you'll be learning how to drive a BR Class 801 electric multiple unit. During this brief introduction, you will be taken through the critical driving controls and performing passenger operations. When you are ready, climb aboard. Take a seat in the driver's position so that you can prepare the train for service. For this introduction, you'll be completing a full loop of the circuit and performing passenger operations when you reach the next stop. Prepare the train for departure. The reverser is used to determine the direction of travel. Set the headlights, as this will let others around you know that this train is operational. To begin loading passengers, you'll need to open the passenger doors. It's time to depart. Close the passenger doors. This train features a combined power and brake handle. So to get the train moving, move the handle into the power range. Coasting is a method used to efficiently maintain speed and reduce motor stress and maintenance requirements. Keeping to speed limits is important. If you begin overspeeding, apply a small amount of braking force by moving the power handle into the braking range. First introduced in September 2019, the Class 801s were built as a replacement for the aging Intercity 125 and 225 sets, which were the primary trains used on the East Coast Mainline at the time. The Class 801 fleet were designed as purely electric multiple units. However, they feature a single 560 kilowatt diesel engine fitted to one of the coaches for emergency use. This 9-car variant of the class has a maximum power output of over 4,500 kilowatts and has a maximum operating speed of 124 miles per hour. You're now approaching the station, so prepare to slow down the train. Use the power handle to apply some braking force to bring the train to a gentle stop in the indicated position. Now that the train has stopped, you can open the passenger doors. Good work. That concludes all the basics of operating this train. In this training module, you'll be taken through the operation of this Class 66 locomotive. During this brief introduction, you'll be covering the critical driving controls and freight operations. When you're ready, climb aboard to get started. You need to insert the reverser first, and then you can move it forwards to set the direction of travel. Set the headlights to let others around us know this train is operating. The direct brake has 3 positions: apply, hold, and release. They directly affect the brake cylinder pressure, shown on the left-hand side of the desk, or on your HUD under the BC entry. While in the apply state, the brake cylinder or BC gauge will fill, meaning an increasing amount of braking force is being applied. Move the handle to the hold position to maintain the same level of braking force, and back to the release position to reduce or release the braking force. The direct brake is used to apply the brakes only on your locomotive and is faster to apply and release than the main brakes. If you're only running as a light locomotive, as you are now, it's usually quicker to just use these brakes. The brakes on this locomotive require us to hold the brake handle in the release position. You can monitor the state of the brakes using the larger brake pipe control gauge in the centre. Keep the brake control in release until you can see the brake pipe control needles are reading 5 bar. Now that the brake pipe control is at 5 bar, the brakes will fully release. Watch the brake cylinder or BC gauge to see it gradually reduce to 0, which tells you that the brakes are now fully released and you can move the train. As you apply power, notice the amp bar rising. This is the amount of power being fed into the traction motors. Try to keep this out of the red, as it means you're overpowering the motors and could damage them. Built in London, Ontario, Canada by EMD, the British Rail Class 66 is a 6-axle diesel electric locomotive used primarily for freight operations in the UK. Introduced in 1998, the initial order of 250 locomotives was said to be the biggest single order of a locomotive since the era of steam trains. More than 500 Class 66 locomotives were built, with the final one being delivered in 2016. The Class 66 has earned the nickname Shed because of its shed-like pitched roof. The freight wagons are behind you. Change direction with the reverser. Then change the indicated junction either by walking over to it or using the map. The junction is correctly aligned and you can now couple up to the freight. Approach slowly and stop, just before the buffers. Don't forget to release the direct brake before you apply power. You can couple and uncouple from either an external camera or on foot. Connect the formation using the external camera. Access the external camera. Now couple the locomotive to the freight wagons. Return to the first-person camera. Nice work. Change direction with the reverser and move the train forward into the indicated siding. You can couple and uncouple from either an external camera or on foot. Uncouple from the wagons on foot this time. That concludes this training module.
In this training module, you'll be learning how to drive the iconic LNER Class A3 steam locomotive number 60103, better known as Flying Scotsman. During this brief introduction, you'll be taken through the critical driving controls and performing passenger operations. When you're ready, climb onto the footplate. Take a seat at the driver's position so that we can prepare this locomotive for operation. For this introduction, you'll be completing a full loop of the circuit and performing passenger operations when you reach the next stop. Let's prepare this locomotive for departure. Open the cylinder cocks to remove any water from the cylinders after the locomotive has been left standing. Water in the cylinders can damage the locomotive as it does not compress like steam. The reverser determines the direction of travel and how much steam is consumed as the locomotive moves. Move the reverser into the full. To begin loading passengers, you will need to open the passenger doors. It's time to depart. Close the passenger doors. Unlike other steam locomotives you may have operated, this locomotive has had its vacuum brakes upgraded to air brakes. The locomotive brake applies braking force on just the locomotive, whereas the train brake applies it to the entire formation. As this train has air brake equipped coaches, we'll be using the train brake. The regulator acts like the throttle for steam locomotives. It controls how much steam is delivered into the cylinders. Slowly open the regulator to apply some power. Remember that power delivery is delayed in a steam locomotive, and applying too much
purchase it and make it part of the national collection, along with extensive public donations.
Now that the train has stopped, you can open the passenger doors. Good work! That concludes all the basics of operating this locomotive. In this introduction, you'll be learning to drive this Siemens Vectron locomotive. During this introduction, you'll be covering the critical driving controls and freight operations. When you're ready, climb aboard. Sit in the driver's seat. Use the master key to activate the control desk. Set the headlights to indicate that this locomotive is operational. The direction of travel in a Vectron locomotive is determined by the reverser buttons. Now we can release the brakes and get ready to move. Move the throttle into the power range.
AFB, 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 AFB. Zugbeeinflussung.
Coasting is a method used to efficiently maintain speed and reduce motor stress and maintenance requirements.
AFB, AFB, AFB. AFB, AFB, AFB.
Come to a stop using the brake.
Störung, Störung, Störung.
The freight wagons are behind us. Change direction with the reverser, then change the junction indicated either by walking over to it or using the map. This locomotive uses manual hook couplers which will need to be connected. You can couple and uncouple from either an external camera or on foot. Let's connect the formation using the external camera. Nice work. Change direction with the reverser and move the train forward to the indicated siding. You can couple and uncouple from either an external camera or on foot. Uncouple from the wagons on foot this time. Nice work. That concludes the basics of operating this locomotive.